Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're doing the series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at my favorite unported arcade games of all time, and I've got a rare treat for you guys today. This is Konami's Polygonet Commander running on their first ever 3D arcade board, and this is running on real hardware. It's not every single video that I can do on unported that's real hardware, most of it is emulation, but this recently came into my collection. I've been looking for it for years, and we can now review it today. Before you get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But Polygonet Commander, and by extension, its other sister game, Polynet Warriors, is a very interesting piece of Konami history, because this was the first in-house 3D board they ever developed, trying to take on Sega and the Model 1 hardware, things like Virtua Fighter or Virtua Racing. This definitely can stand toe-to-toe in spots with Sega's best hardware effort of the era, but it's a really interesting set of games that Konami released for it. These are first-person shooters, one in which you control a tank and one in which you control a little being, and we're just taking a look at the tank version of Polygonet Commander today. What you can see here is a very simple game to pick up and learn how to play. You're a tank, you have to destroy so many other tanks in a level, do it before the time runs out and you succeed, don't do it before the time runs out and you fail. It is as easy as that, and the great thing is, even though this uses an arcade stick, it has a very natural control scheme to it. Push forward, you go forward, push back, you push back. Any diagonal in any direction will go in a turning radius forward or backwards. So in your imagination, you might think that it would be very hard to control a tank with tank controls via an arcade joystick, but actually it's very natural feeling. And since I seem to collect arcade boards that need custom control modifications, it's a breath of fresh air getting something into my collection that just works off a standard arcade stick. Now in arcades, this would have been part of a 4-up cabinet. There would have been 3 other units next to each other, and you could do 4-player death matches. Unfortunately, I only have the one board, so we can't really talk about the multiplayer mode whatsoever, but the great thing is this has a fully featured 1-player mode, which means I can actually do something with it in my collection and review it for you guys here today. And it's just a really interesting look at Konami's first attempt at 3D. I actually really love the art style. It's got some bright, vibrant primary colors, and obviously none of the polygons have any shading or texture on them whatsoever. They are basically just flat colors. And I think that really works in context of the game. Those are definitely recognizable as tanks. You get this really nice 2D background art there with that sunset golden hour in the gradient in the back. And you have a lot of fun different arenas to kind of navigate around. There's going to be obstructions and other things in your way, and you need to find where all the tanks are and destroy them before the time runs out. It's an extremely simple style game, but it is really fun. It would have been even more interesting back in the day when people really didn't see 3D games very often whatsoever, because this was the first era of arcade 3D for someone like Konami. Sure, there was hard driving from Atari before this, but for the most part, when you went to an arcade, you saw 2D games based on sprites. So I'm sure when people saw this on the arcade floors, they ran to it because it was a completely new experience. Now, interestingly, this did apparently come out in North America. My arcade board is a North American ROM variant, but I've never seen a single photograph of this cabinet on an arcade floor in North America, and barely any evidence of it doing much in Japan either. If you have any evidence of this ever being in the US or you played it anywhere outside of Japan, do leave me a comment down below, because I would be curious just where this board actually came from. This is one of those games that is exceedingly rare, and I'm assuming 99 out of 100 of you are not going to know what Polygonet Commanders is, or that there was an arcade board called the Polygonet hardware. But this is in fact what Konami did, and it really does work well. I love rare and random arcade games, and I especially love them when they're as fun as this. It's very simple, you just blow up the tanks, but the challenge in it is so much fun. On normal difficulty, this game isn't relatively hard, but on normal time, it can become exceedingly difficult. You can set the amount of time you get per round, and you definitely want to up that. You can emulate this game in MAME, so it's not just me who can enjoy it with the original hardware. You can definitely check it out too and give it a shot. It's something that you'll play for like 10 minutes, and it's a good historical episode of what Konami was doing back in the day. This is not something that's going to become your new favorite game of all time, but it is interesting to see what the original 3D looked like when Konami was involved. And it's also got an awesome soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with more gameplay.
Opposition within the time limit. Good luck. Roger. The enemy is around you. Phase clear. The enemy is around you.
really fun soundtrack, and those voice samples there sound pretty clear as well, and Konami always did good with the voice work back in the day. As we take a look at this next stage, it's so good that this was not actually texture mapped as far as the polygons are concerned. This game is definitely aged better, and I think games with a very low poly count age better when there's actually not any texture work on them, because the textures are usually highly pixelated and it definitely ages the game up way more. Even this last 30-second graphic here is so stylized. This game has a lot of charm, style, and vibe going for it. And with the flat polygons with no texture mapping whatsoever, I think it actually makes this game hold up way better because of it. This is just a fun graphical style, and it's interesting that it's in Tate mode as well. This is a vertical screen. It would have had 4 vertical monitors mounted on the cabinets. It's interesting that's the aspect ratio they decided to go with, because it does narrow your field of view down left and right. There's more to see on the x-axis than there is on the y-axis, so I'm not sure why they would have gone with a vertical Tate monitor style for this game, but I think it looks really good, and you do have all of those 2D elements over top as well, giving you your time, how many tanks are left, things such as that. And it is just a fun thing to see. You have all of that text at the bottom showing you how many tanks are available to kill, and it is completely transparent over that. It's not blocking off the screen, which is a really nice look as well. It makes me wonder what else they were planning on developing for this arcade board, because there's only 2 games made for it, Polygonet Commanders, which you're watching now, and Polynet Warriors, which I've shown before. They definitely spent a lot of time developing their first in-house 3D board, and they basically got rid of it after these 2 games came out. I would really be curious to see what else would have happened, whether we would have a first-person shooter, a 3D platformer, maybe a shmup. It would have been interesting to see. My guess would be the next game they would have made for something like this, had they continued, would be a 3D fighting game, because Sega was absolutely killing it in arcades with Virtua Fighter, so I'm sure Konami wanted to get in on that action, because they always tried to get a hit in the 3D arcade gaming space, and they were never able to be successful. Whether it's Fighting Bujitsu, whether it's Battle Triss, they never actually made it big in that one genre, so I'm guessing that would have been what comes next. But I just love how colorful, again, this game is, and just how challenging it is. Every tank has its own unique look and feel, and all of these primary colors just pop off the screen. And because this is a first-generation 3D game, it also runs at a really good frame rate. This is infinitely playable. But I'm going to give you one more sample of the soundtrack, as you got more voice acting than you did the soundtrack the first time. 30 seconds this time, and I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about the history of this game, the hardware, and why I love it so much. But enjoy, and don't forget, this looks like a screensaver from Windows 95. Again, the soundtrack has that techno vibe, and it does work, and there is no story in this game whatsoever. You have no idea why you're actually fighting these tanks. It's just something that kind of happens, where Polynet Warriors has a little bit more story, a little bit more going on for it, but it's still very minimal. And honestly, I bought this board because it was available to me, but I think I will convert it over to a Polynet Warriors game, because that game is just a little bit more charming and a little bit more colorful, if you could believe that. As we move on to the last level in this game here, it is just a ton of fun. I love going through the history of particular arcade game makers, and Konami is obviously one of my favorite developers, right behind Sega. I have gotten an arcade board in 3D from every generation of Konami in-house arcade hardware outside of a GTI Club class board, so I'm one board away from doing a Konami 3D full set that wasn't based on consoles, and this was the next to last game that was on my list to pick up, and I'm so happy to get it. This is one of those things I wish I saw it back in the day, and again, if you saw this in North America, tell me down below, and tell me if you even knew this game existed, because I would be curious who knows about this, outside of maybe people that read System 16 back in the day or still read it today. But it's just a fun game. I love the tank aspect, I love the first-person shooter aspect, and there wasn't a lot like this on arcade floors back in the day. Maybe Konami made this game in this first-person view and genre, because they didn't want to directly take on Sega with a racing game or a fighting game first. They thought they would come up with something new and unique and hope that that sold arcade cabinets. And I do wish I could find one of these cabinets in the wild somewhere, but I'm assuming that they're probably extinct. If you know anywhere in Japan, Europe, or otherwise that has an arcade board for this on the floor, I would love to see a photograph of it, because I would be very interested. But that is Polygonet Commanders, one of the rarest Konami games ever made, something that took me years to find, and now I can review it on Unported Playlist. And I highly doubt you're ever going to see this ported home, because that does sometimes happen on this playlist. Short of that, we are done. Definitely check out the video on Polynet Wars on my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.